Hello everybody, why don't you come down to Derry, Maine, where you can ride the rides, have some popcorn, see a nice clown with some red balloons. Bring your friends, bring your kids. And you know what about those balloons? They float down here. And when you're down here, you'll float too! It Chapter 2, directed by Andy Muschietti, the man that directed Mama and the previous It movie, It Chapter 1. This movie stars Jessica Chastain as the adult Beverly Marsh, and we bring in back Sophia Lillis as young Beverly. We got James McAvoy as Bill Denbrough, the adult Billy. Jaden Mantelli plays the young Bill in the flashbacks. Bill Hader plays adult Richie Tozer, and they brought back Finn Wolfhard to play young Richie in the flashbacks. Chosen Jacobs is brought back to play young Mike, while we have the adult Mike being played by Isaiah Mustafa, the Old Spice guy. That's awesome! Jay Ryan plays adult Ben Haskam, and they brought back the kid that was playing young Ben to play him again. They brought back Jack Dylan Grazer to play young Eddie Kaspbrak, and old Eddie Kaspbrak is played by James Ransom. Wyatt Olaf has been brought back to play young Stanley, and they got Andy Bean to play the adult Stanley Uris. They got Nicholas Hamilton back to play young Henry, and Teets Grant plays the adult Henry Bowers. Of course, they brought back Bill Skarsgård to be Pennywise the Clown again, and Jess Wexler plays Audrey Phillips, Bill Denbrough's wife in the movie. So let's talk about this movie. Now, I was really looking forward to It Chapter 2. I really did like the first one. I had some problems with the first one because I've read the book and I've seen the miniseries, and I felt like some of the context from the book that would have helped explain some things should have been in this movie, but they didn't put all the context, and some of the characters a little bit underdeveloped, while some of the other characters felt a bit overdeveloped. And I think that may have been one of the reasons why some people didn't think that there was really any chemistry between these kids. Although I thought there really was chemistry between the kids. I really felt their friendship and their camaraderie, the way they stuck together and fought for each other. But they did a better job improving that in this movie and feeling the chemistry between the kids and the adult cast. The adult cast is done so well and casted so well. You can tell like which one is which, and you can actually feel the chemistry even better this time around than you did in the first movie, at least from my perspective. The plot of this movie is 6 of the Losers Club have left Derry and gone on to successful ends. Bill is now a successful novelist and screenwriter. Beverly, I believe, is into the fashion industry with her husband as a business partner. Ben is an architect. Eddie is in insurance. Richie is a stand-up comedian. Stanley's doing something dealing with organizing, I believe. And Mike has become the librarian in Derry, Maine. He's the only one that stayed in Derry, Maine. So when he finds out that Pennywise has come back, killing people again and killing children again, he has to call everybody to come back to Derry. At the same time, Pennywise has brought in his own ally, Henry Bowers, played by Teets Grant, the bully that terrorized these kids, who at this point is locked up in an insane asylum. So Pennywise uses his powers to bring adult Henry back, and that's pretty much our movie. The miniseries had Audrey Bill's wife played a little bit more of a role in the film, but she's barely in this movie. She's only got one scene really. So if anybody thought that Audrey was going to play a bigger role because she played a bit of a role in the miniseries, that's not going to happen. Now, I did like this movie. I think this movie is not as good as the first one, mostly because of the length of this movie. This movie is even longer than the first one. This movie is almost 3 hours long, and you do tend to feel the length. The pacing is not as good as, say, pacing in a movie like Avengers Endgame or other long movies. The pacing is a little bit slow in some areas. So let's talk about this movie and the strengths and the negatives of this film. The acting in this movie is really good. I really did like the acting in this film. I did like how they do the love triangle between Beverly, Bill, and Ben. That was done very well because Beverly still doesn't know who wrote her the poem that she got when she was younger. And she still thinks that Bill wrote the poem. But if you've seen the first movie, you know that Ben wrote the poem, actually. Your hair is winter fire, January embers, my heart burns there too. Bill Hader in this movie is the standout. He does a great job with the comic relief, and the comedic chemistry is coming off both him and Andy Kaspbrak actor James Ransome. They are awesome in this movie. They really bounce off of each other very well. I did like the flashbacks that they showed in this movie that didn't show up in the first film. That was very interesting that the flashbacks that they show in this movie weren't in the first film. Part of me almost feels like some of these flashbacks should have been in the first film. That might have made things a little bit better with the flow of this movie. But then one of the main reasons why they have these flashbacks is to have the kids in this film in order to help connect things. So maybe having the flashbacks in this film does help the movie. It's kind of a mixed bag with that. But the thing is, this movie didn't really have to be so long. There are some things that could have been cut out. I think maybe one of the deaths that happens in this movie could have been cut out. That could have been replaced with one of the other deaths that Pennywise does to one of the Derry townspeople to be the first death in this movie instead. That might have got the ball rolling at a much quicker pace, maybe. And then there's this part in the plot where the group has to split up on their own separate journeys in order to gather these tokens for this ritual in order to defeat Pennywise. That part sort of cut into the main asset that these characters have together, which is their camaraderie, their friendship. The fact that they stuck together was their biggest strength against Pennywise. By breaking apart and going on their separate little ventures in order to gain these little tokens, that makes it easier for Divide and Conquer, though. I think what they should have done is, as each person is coming into Derry, they are going on this journey to get the token without even realizing it, and then reunite, and that might have made the flow work a little bit better, perhaps. But I really did like this movie. This movie was done really well, and let's talk about Pennywise. Pennywise is awesome in this movie. Bill Skarsgård does a great job with the scares in this movie. And I did like the fact that some of the scares came off a bit comedic too, because it felt like a Sam Raimi feel to that, which is really cool. The CG that is used on some of the scares is great. I did like the CG used with the Pennywise scares. But then we're getting into the flashbacks with the kids. These kids have gotten older, obviously. It's been a couple years since the first movie. So they use de-aging on these kids. On some of these kids, you really can't tell that they use de-aging, but on a couple of the others, you do tell. Say with Richie Finn Wolfhard has gotten a little bit older, so you can tell that when they used the de-aging to make him look like he looked back during the first movie. So you can tell that de-aging was used on him, but I really couldn't tell because I wasn't watching on an IMAX screen. I was watching on a regular screen. But I think if you're watching on an IMAX screen, then you will be able to see the de-aging effects that they used on the kids in order to make them look like the same age that they were in the first movie. Some critics were saying that maybe they shouldn't have brought back adult Henry Bowers, and that might have made the movie flow a little better. But here's the thing. Adult Henry Bowers is necessary. I'm not going to say if you've read the book then you don't understand why Adult Henry Bowers is necessary. I'm going to say the reason why Henry Bowers is necessary for the story is because these characters, they are not connected to their imagination, their wonder, their innocence like they were when they were children. So therefore, the scares that are coming from Pennywise wouldn't really work as well. So that's why you need Henry Bowers. Henry Bowers is somebody from the real world. Henry Bowers is more tangible and more of a threat to them. And that helps out with the idea that Pennywise wants to divide and conquer them. As for the losers need to fight Henry again because they need to show that they are more braver than they really are in order to help them rise against Pennywise. And that was done really well. I really did like that. Now let's get into a couple of the other negatives with this film. I've already said that maybe some things could have been cut out in order to shorten the length of this movie. And de-aging was a bit of a problem. The love triangle between Ben, Bev, and Bill, it wasn't totally developed right, but it did have some good development in it, and I really did like the way they did it, though. I think one of the reasons why maybe some people couldn't totally feel the love triangle between Ben, Bill, and Bev is because Ben is feeling a bit drawn back since he still sees that Bev still has feelings for Bill. But overall, this was a really, really great movie, and I definitely like this movie a lot. It's not as good as the first one, but it's still a really good movie. And the character development was done much better with everybody in this film than it was in the first one. Everybody really feels more fleshed out in this movie than the first one. In the first one, Stan and Mike didn't get enough character development. This time, Stan and Mike got a little bit more character development, even though Stan is not in the movie as much as maybe somebody would like. But I kind of expected that, considering I know what happens to Stan. I'm not going to say what happens to Stan. But overall, this is a really great movie, and there's a cameo in here that sometimes pops up in some Stephen King movies. I'm not going to say who, but you'll know it when you see it. And it's really great when you see the cameo. So overall, I really did like this movie a lot. I gave the first movie a B+, I believe. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a B. It's definitely worth checking out, and that's all I got to say for It Chapter 2. Yes, it's not as good as the first one, but it's still a great movie, and I definitely think people should check this movie out.